The founder of collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, remains in a jail cell in the Bahamas as he waits for extradition to the United States and the possibility of spending decades behind bars. But what about his parents?
Sam Bankman-Fried is going down, and it looks like he's taking everyone around him down with him. As he makes his way into U.S. custody, all eyes have turned to his accomplices. In this case, the two people most responsible for SBF's world scam. The two that made him. Like and subscribe.
We want to share with our viewers sort of what we've been able to gather about Samuel Bankman-Fried, his mother and father. We know his father, Joseph Bankman, works as a tax law professor at Stanford. A family spokesman says Bankman also worked for FTX for almost a year, helping with charitable operations and recruiting lawyers in the company's early days. He allegedly traveled frequently to the Bahamas, where the company was based, and last year he advised his son during meetings on Capitol Hill as he got set to testify in front of a congressional committee. Barbara Fried, his mother, retired from teaching at Stanford and headed a political advocacy network called Mind the Gap, which supported Democratic campaigns and causes. The Times reports that her son was among the donors for the network. She later resigned from that position, though. Bankman-Fried has said his parents made no vital decisions inside FTX, and no evidence has emerged tying his mom and dad to any criminal activity. During testimony at the Capitol on Tuesday, the current CEO of FTX said the organization of the company, could make the investigation tough.
Meanwhile, Bankman-Fried and his parents together bought real estate in the Bahamas worth $121 million. Now, Bankman-Fried has maintained in an interview with the New York Times that his parents, quote, weren't involved in any of the relevant parts of the business, such as the balances or risk management. Both parents have remained in the Bahamas, and it has been reported they have told their friends their son's legal bills will likely wipe them out. But putting aside their son's legal bills, what about them, particularly the dad? Could he be charged with any crimes? Is there any talk of an investigation of the parents, particularly the dad?
Well, I think we have seen them make a bit of a cameo appearance, not in the indictments this week, but in a related lawsuit by the CFTC. So in this, at one point, we read the regulator noting a number of different parties, including the parents, and what they may have been able to have FTX buy, sort of various personal expenses, of which you mentioned real estate, that's on the list, private jet use, a few other things. Now, as is often the case, it's a little unclear which party received what, but we do know they did have this cameo this week in this week's complaint.
I guess the question, Justin, is as a practical matter, how involved were the parents with this business?
Sure, I think we know some things about both of them. We know his mother, Barbara Fried, was not really involved in the business itself. In the last month or so, she's been in the Bahamas advising her son, but before that was not certainly not as active as her husband. Joe Bankman was actually a paid employee of FTX for nearly a year. He was involved in a number of different parts of the business. The way he was characterized, largely the biggest part is probably the philanthropic efforts, but also took an interest, was involved in the lobbying, some of the lobbying they did in Washington, joined his son in meetings on the Hill. Beyond that, it's unclear, right? We don't know what he knew and when he knew about the sort of central allegation of the whole case, which is the use of customer funds at FTX and how that money landed in this related trading business.
Yeah, but there are other charges, right? I mean, the campaign finance charges as well here. Nick Ackerman, we've seen other big businesses that have failed based on fraud, and it tends to be the case that numerous executives end up getting charged in those cases. It doesn't just typically end up with the CEO charged and no one else.
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, in fact, most of the counts in this indictment allege a conspiracy. A conspiracy is basically an agreement to commit a crime. So you have to, Sam Bankman-Fried had to agree with somebody else. And so the question is, who are those somebody else's? I mean, the indictment is very clear that they're charging other people, or they're saying that there are other people involved, known and unknown to the grand jury. I mean, to me, it's pretty clear that what's going on here is that this was an indictment put together quickly so that the government could immediately arrest and extradite Sam Bankman-Fried, and then go after the other people and put together all the evidence. This is not going to be the last word in the charges in this case.